Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is Bird Runningwater. For more than 2 decades, Bird has been the director of the Sundance Institute's Native American and Indigenous program, overseeing the Native Filmmakers Lab, the Native Producers Fellowship, the Sundance Film Festival's Native Forum, and much more. Bird, who belongs to the Cheyenne and Mescalero Apache tribes, has spent decades supporting filmmakers and projects. He is now the CEO of Cloud Woman Media and has a first look deal with Amazon Studios. Bird, thanks so much for being with us this week on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad we could make this work. As I mentioned off camera, we nearly had the chance to meet up with you in LA during the apology for Sacheen Littlefeather. Unfortunately, Sacheen passed away shortly after the formal apology. How important was it, though, do you think, for the Academy to make that formal apology?
Well, it's something that my colleague Heather Ray and I had been, working on actually for quite a few years. We were aware of Sacheen's history post appearance at the Oscars and, everything that happened to her, following being there. But it was kind of generally unknown, I feel like, amongst a lot of the Academy leadership. But, the place where that we were able to really, I think, start, to have kind of some strong consideration leading up to the event was when we were advocating for the inclusion of the video of her appearing at the Oscars to be included in the newly launched Academy Museum. And so it was kind of there where things kind of started to take a foothold. And it was a lot of really, a lot of education, a lot of lobbying, amongst our peers within the Academy, because both Heather and I belong to the Academy. And it always was met with kind of, I think, really, a lot of disbelief because people weren't aware of what happened to her and, kind of the aftermath, I guess, of when she appeared on the Oscars.
Well, why do you think, this just came about recently, but why do you think it took so long for that acknowledgement and for work on an apology to happen?
Yeah, well, I think for one, her appearance happened almost 50 years ago, and I think, the Academy has taken, some really great strides in really trying to diversify the membership and to also, I believe, kind of take a strong, more equitable stance on, its operations. But one of the things that was really kind of a tipping point also was the Academy Museum, being on the Inclusion Advisory Committee with a really great network of, very diverse, Academy members. We were all weighing in as the Academy Museum was being built and as they were curating what the exhibits were going to be. It kind of happened a lot of the, I guess, the big push for what the exhibits were going to be happened, during the lockdown of pandemic, kind of right around the time of Black Lives Matter and, the death of George Floyd in the United States. And so the Academy really kind of pivoted its approach to how it was trying to, give, present its historical lens on American cinema and cinema in general. And so it began to take more of a critical lens.
Sacheen's appearance in 1973 predates me a bit, but certainly people in the newsroom here remember that when she walked on screen and declined Brando's Best Actor Oscar and spoke about the mistreatment of Indigenous peoples in Hollywood. What do you think that meant then for Indigenous peoples to see that and hear that?
Well, it's interesting. I myself was just a toddler when that happened, so I don't recall it either. But, I'd always heard references to it. And I remember being in, when I was an undergraduate student at the University of Oklahoma, doing some research papers and researching on microfiche, scanning through newspapers of what was researching the American Indian movement. And I remember coming across some of the articles when I was looking at, Wounded Knee and the Alcatraz takeover and all of these historical, moments that happened in the 70s. I saw that this event happened. But I couldn't ever really find, any more information. And I feel like it's kind of one of those things that really kind of reappeared image-wise in the age of social media. And so I feel like a lot of Native people did see that. A lot of people that I saw at the event honoring Sacheen, spoke of what, kind of, really not being too intrigued by the Oscars, but all of a sudden everyone woke up whenever a Native woman appeared in her buckskin dress on stage. And so I don't know how many ripples it had back then, but I do know that, when she spoke of Wounded Knee, which is something Marlon Brando wanted to do, which was the standoff at Wounded Knee, they were experiencing a media blackout within the American press at the time. And so for her to bring that, forward in her remarks on a global stage like the Oscars, I think really helped raise awareness for that particular cause.
Kind of reminds me of Standing Rock when there wasn't much going on when we were down there covering it. Then they were talking about it on Saturday Night Live and all over the place.
Yeah.
Bird, you have degrees in journalism, Native studies, public affairs. How did you get involved in the film and television industry?
I always say wrong place, wrong time. It was never an intention or a goal of mine. I just happened to, coming out of graduate school, my first job that I got coming out of school was working for, a global trust, a global charity, a foundation called the Ford Foundation, which at the time had billions of dollars in assets. And I was signed to the media program within a media arts and culture program, and I was responsible for global grant making, non-commercial support of radio, TV, film projects through not only in the U.S. where the New York office focused, but around the world and where the foundation had offices, Africa, Asia, Latin America, Russia. And so I got to work with a lot of media systems around the world, which is when I first then connected with Sundance and attended my first Sundance Film Festival while working at Ford in 1998, which was the year that Smoke Signals premiered.
Important film as well. In 2001, you got involved with Sundance Institute. Many would know of it, Sundance, of course, for the world-renowned film festival. But you wrote that during your time there, you've worked with more than 150 Indigenous filmmakers who've received, mentoring and support. Can you talk about that work that you did there?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was hired, I was the third person to lead the Institute's, Indigenous investment work. And what part of the story that very few people know about Sundance Institute is that, Robert Redford is the president and founder of the Institute. But actually, the founding of Sundance actually came from some of his early stage work of wanting to personally mentor and support Native storytellers to tell our own stories. Because, it all stemmed from a time when he was asked to audition to play an Indian, as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white man, which he found a particularly offensive request. And it led him on a personal quest. He's like, there's got to be Native actors out there. There must be Native writers. There must be Native directors. And this was even before Sundance was founded. And so through his environmentalist networks with Native tribes and, mostly in the Southwest, he put out calls to his networks and identified people who wanted to be filmmakers, people like Larry Littlebird, who is Santo Domingo Pueblo, and Taos Pueblo, Chris Spotted Eagle, who was the Humas Nation from Louisiana, and identified some of our first filmmakers, to support and to mentor and to give camera equipment and resources to. And this notion of mentorship really kind of led to the founding of Sundance Institute. And so Chris and Larry were actually part of the first meetings of the founding of Sundance Institute when a mandate, was established by Bob Redford to have a thread of work within the Institute, that would serve Indigenous filmmakers. And so it's kind of a big origin story that nobody really knows.
Well, I'm glad you could share it with us. Bird, much more to talk about at your time with the Institute and your time now moving forward. We just have to step aside for a quick break. and then we'll continue the conversation here on Face to Face with Bird Runningwater. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Bird Runningwater. And Bird, you're going to be stepping away from Sundance Institute, or you have actually, which we'll get to next. But are there things that you were particularly proud of from your time with Sundance?
Yeah, there are quite a few. You know, for one, I think it's one of the best jobs I ever had. You know, I got to be welcomed into Indigenous communities literally around the world, you know, while on the quest for great storytellers. And, you know, when I first started, you know, running the Indigenous program at Sundance, you know, two of the very first filmmakers that I really took, you know, a great risk in supporting and really championed, you know, were Sterling Harjo and Taika Waititi, you know, and we both know them now as the co-creators of Reservation Dogs. You know, Taika won an Oscar for Jojo Rabbit. And, you know, and so those two artists are really kind of, we all kind of consider each other's brothers, you know, because, you know, we started out in a very specific time, you know, almost 20 years ago, where it was so difficult. You know, there had been generations fighting, trying to, you know, be acknowledged within this Hollywood system. And so with them, they didn't even see immediate success as well. And so it's just been really great to see how far they've come. I've also been able to work with people like Sydney Freeland, you know, who is coming off of a really exciting top secret TV series that I can't say much about. But also, you know, there's just been so many other filmmakers who are now directing for TV, writing for TV, making feature films, really working with, you know, significant budgets as well. And, you know, and also it's been really great to see, you know, some of the Indigenous filmmakers in Canada that we've supported, like Elamaya Tailfeathers and Dennis Goulet, you know, who are really, you know, leading the way, I feel like, for a lot of Indigenous Canadian cinema.
Absolutely, all former guests on the show here as well. And, you know, I don't think there's a better show on television right now than Reservation Dogs. We're still only halfway through the second season here in Canada. But, you know, some of the things you're talking about there, almost 20 years, and you've said that Native Americans, up until recently, had been pretty much erased from popular culture. What did representation look like when you were first starting out, and how's it changed to now?
You know, I wish I don't know if we could retroactively go back and kind of track that data, you know, to see what our representation was, you know, 20 years ago. But even with all the great success we're having now, you know, there's an organization in the States called Illuminative, which I'm on the board of, and they led this really amazing $4 million national survey to understand what Americans think of Native Americans. And two of the top findings they came out was that 79% of Americans don't know that Native Americans exist today as contemporary peoples, you know. And also in a survey of education curriculum, they found that probably around 80% of state education standards in American school systems don't include Native Americans beyond, you know, kind of grade 6 or 7. And also they don't teach about us past the year 1900. And so when you combine that with, you know, basically invisibility in American popular culture, you know, we have a really serious effect of erasure, which is primarily, you know, intentional based on a colonial process. But, you know, current survey numbers land, I think, in terms of representation, even with our success, at around 0.04% on American screens. So while we're having some strides, you know, there is still a lot more work to go.
Just, you know, mind-blowing to hear some of those statistics. You know, you're saying that there are being some strides. Can you put your finger on something that, you know, you noticed that there was a change happening?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, one of the big tipping points was, you know, when Sterling Harjo and Sierra Teller Ornelas, who's a Navajo showrunner, both had TV shows that were going into production right at the same time. You know, Sierra show Rutherford Falls that had Michael Grey Eyes in it, you know, ran for 2 seasons with Peacock, which is an NBC streaming platform. And I feel like at that time, that those shows also kind of were pandemic shows that went into production during, pandemic culture, but also given the shift of racial reckoning within the United States post George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, the industry kind of like, I feel like, did a bit of a broadening shift towards trying and the touting of BIPOC to really trying to be more inclusive. And I noticed a lot of sales for properties were happening during that time. So a lot of work got put into development, including I have shows that are still in development with Ava DuVernay and with Ethan Hawke as well. But, it's like now that we're out of the pandemic and viewership is lessening on platforms, we're starting to see kind of maybe a bit of a pullback on some of the business side of which shows are actually going to get made. And Rutherford Falls was subsequently canceled. And so it's interesting to see, though I'm really seeing a lot of feature films that are really being considered for financing kind of like in the $15 to $20 million range, which is really kind of a first for us. So we're still waiting to see if those actually get greenlit. But there's some pretty sizable, epic films that I think might be forthcoming soon as well.
Yeah, and I want to get to the commercial side of things soon, but you yourself have a first look deal with Amazon Studios. Can you tell us a bit about what that means?
Yeah, well, when all of this exciting movement was happening with Rutherford Falls and, Reservation Dogs, I kind of felt like my time at Sundance, I was like, I really want to help the work that's happening there in TV, but my work was specifically independent cinema and global cinema. And so I happened to just had a request for a meeting with the head of the TV studio, Vernon Sanders, at Amazon Studios, and I had a chat with him, and we hit it off. And so he made me an offer to have what's called a first look deal. And so basically, it allowed me to leave Sundance to move over to my production company, and Amazon is supporting my production company to have basically a first look or a first dibs on film and TV projects that I want to get made through their studio. And so that's currently what I'm doing, is pitching and lining up projects, all mostly Indigenous authored, and really kind of like trying to, lend, what support and expertise I can to our Indigenous film and TV communities, really kind of in a different capacity.
Bird, we're going to talk to you about one of the projects that you previously mentioned there that you're working on. We just have to step aside for one more quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here on Face to Face with Bird Runningwater. Stick around. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Bird Runningwater. And Bird, we were talking about some of the work that you're doing now, the first look deal with Amazon Studios. You've been working on what's been touted as the first Native American family drama developed for network television, a series called Sovereign. Can you tell us about that and where that's at?
Yeah, well, that one is still in the works, as they say, in development. But, I partnered with Ava DuVernay, who's an Oscar-nominated director and has a really lucrative TV deal with Warner Brothers Television. And, and she approached me because she had a concept to create a family drama, and it's been a really great process working with her. I adore her and am so in awe of her. And we had two co-creators on that show, Sydney Freeland, who is Navajo, and also Shaz Bennett, whose family comes from New Zealand and also has some Maori whakapapa, as they call it, lineage. But, they're my two co-creators. But one of the things that happened, we developed the show, through Warner Brothers with NBC, and in all of the shifting, process between platforms and on-air kind of business, we're now kind of cross-developing for NBC Peacock TV. But one of the things that also happened is Shaz went off to go showrun the final season of Queen Sugar. Sydney's been off directing this super secret series that nobody knows about. So now they're both through production, and we're back in on the other end trying to get our materials in, hopefully to see if we're going to get a green light series order as well. So, but that show really has a special place in my heart. I really want to see that one made, but I do have other shows in the works as well.
Well, we wish you all the best with getting that off the ground. We were talking about the commercial side of things, and when you look at the success of a film like Prey or a show like Reservation Dogs, do you think those fundings, the money that those eyeballs that those projects are seeing is showing that there is a commercial potential in having Indigenous stories and people on the screen and behind the cameras?
I believe so, because one of the things that we work with, of course, within, U.S. culture is, is capitalism, right? It's like we're not, a country like Canada that actually has a great system for public support of the arts. And so we just don't have those kinds of systems. So one of the things that we really have to rely upon, especially on the film side, is kind of like, equity-based financing, where projects are going to actually seek a return on investment. On the TV side, it's a very similar model, but it's also, now with the streaming platform business, it's a lot about, the business of who is doing the streaming, whether it's Hulu in the US or whether it's Peacock or whether it's Netflix or Amazon Prime. They all track and watch everything that they put online, and the eyeballs and the numbers of clicks, and they can even track how far somebody watches through a program, and they do so much analysis. But so much of these shows' success really kind of like, I think, is really more valued when it leads to more people signing up to stream and to join the platform, and so I do think, Prey, which was Hulu's, greatest debut of all time to date, really played well, not only in the U.S., but globally. And I think it even beat out, the Kardashians premiere of their new series on Hulu. And so I just really feel like, Reservation Dogs is going into season 3. Sterling also has an overall deal at FX Networks as well. And I know that he's taking other Indigenous artists in there with their half-hour comedies and their hour-long dramas and trying to get those made as well. I think one of the most inspiring things that I'm seeing with having people in positions as showrunner and with deals, I have a deal, Sterling has a deal, Sierra Teller Ornelas has a deal with Universal Studios, Michael Greyeyes has a deal with Blumhouse Media. So there's 4 of us who have studio deals. And all of us are basically really in a position to hire Native directors and Native writers, which is also having an impact on the Hollywood system, because now all of this talent, besides actors, but writers and directors are now getting agents and managers and entertainment lawyers and are really moving even outside of the Native directing space to direct for mainstream TV shows that are on network TV and streamers. So it's a really big growth on the business side, I feel like, for our Native community. And I really hope to see that trend continues, because the more business and the more work that everybody gets, the more leverage that they'll get to actually have more Native stories, considered for all these different broadcast outlets.
Well, all those do sound like pretty exciting partnerships. I hope that Greyeyes Blumhouse one is for some kind of a horror movie. Yeah. Bird, great to talk to you. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but do thank you for doing the show and wish you all the best on all of those projects that you have in the works coming up.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And that is all the time we have for this week. Of course, you can watch any episodes you may have missed by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca. And this episode and all of our past episodes are also available as podcasts. You can find those wherever you download your podcasts. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in to Face to Face. Have a great night. We'll see you back here next week.